You know, it's always good to be going down the road with you. We're going to talk about schools. We're going to talk about technical education. We're going to talk about careers and what some of the young people want to do versus what they could do versus what they should do. We're going to visit about all that. But there's a lot of talk about crime levels. Are they higher? Are they not higher? You know, all it takes is one shooting and everybody's going to be thinking about it. Well, Chief David Zibolski is with us right now. Chief is, well, I don't want to say he's the new man anymore in the Fargo metro area because he's been here for a little while, but he certainly has a handle and an understanding of the department, and he's willing to talk to us about it. Chief, good to have you on down the road.
Thanks, Joel. It's great to be here.
So there's a perception out there that you got a problem and the town's getting more violent. Is it?
Well, I think from a data perspective, I don't know that we can show that right now, but certainly, and I would agree that the fear of crime is always greater than the statistical crime. And so if that's the feeling in the community, that's something that we have to address. So we've been working very hard to hone in on certain locations, certain people responsible for a lot of these crimes and bringing them to justice. And as we reshape and reorganize the department, that data-driven, intelligence-led thing is a perspective is a big focus for us.
You know, when I was younger, there was crime in Fargo. That was the big city. And a lot of people from our area and other areas flocked to Fargo. That was the place that they had services and opportunities and that type of thing. And so I think we in the rural area take that for granted a little bit, that you inherit some of the trouble that we have. So it's been going on. We've got a lot of media in this town. We've got a lot of media in this town, Chief. And so do you think that that's the reason that some of this perception hits?
Well, perception really is based on what people pay attention to. So, you know, if you live in an area or if you watch a lot of shows that talk about violent crime, eventually that starts to permeate your perception and cognition, and you feel like you're in a dangerous location. And that's a little bit of it, but, you know, the media has to do their job and report these things, although I think, and I mentioned to one of the reporters last week, I've never seen a media show start with, and today for the third day in a row, there's no violent crime in the city. You know, if we did that, we might change perception a little bit, but, you know, that's not necessarily the reality. But I think it's, you know, people feel it in their neighborhoods. There are some areas where we have some challenges in our city, and we're a large and growing city, and as a large and growing city, you start to see issues that happen in other large cities as well. But to that extent, from in my perspective, and I've only been here 9 months, and we're really setting a baseline. But you know, having worked in Milwaukee, Madison, Beloit, I can tell you that comparably into other cities that I'm familiar with, Fargo is a very safe city. And while we want to eliminate all violent crime and make sure everyone feels safe walking around our city, you know, compared to others, we are heads above.
Do we have gang activity in Fargo? And if we do, do we not understand what's happening when it comes to gang activity?
Well, I haven't seen any substantiated gang activity in my time here, but what we do see is drug trafficking. Now, some of that drug trafficking operations are related to what you might term as drug cartels or gangs from that perspective. Do we have people here who affiliate with gangs? Perhaps we do, but that doesn't seem to be the driver of our crime. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing in terms of the violence outside of disputes or domestic cases, things of that nature, have a lot to do with drug trafficking. We know that there's a rise in overdose deaths and there's a proliferation of fentanyl coming in, not just here, but across the U.S.
So what about COVID? What has that played? People, you know, kind of housed up, not going to work, not interacting. You mentioned domestic crime. I'm sure what we're talking about there is the type of crime that, well, it's in everybody's mind, what's happening in some of these houses now. So how big of a role did COVID play in all that?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, again, the jury's out on that, but I think it's evident to say that things like street robberies, things that would happen on the street weren't as prevalent. Even burglaries, you would say, may have down because people were home more. But it did kind of cause our society to become less social. And so now as some people are going back into society and involved in their day-to-day activities, they've lost some of that ability to interact and deal with conflict without rising it to a level of violence. The national perspective on violent crime in terms of homicides and things of that nature are that they are up across the board nationally and in some cities at a greater level. So I think COVID played apart what that exactly is. I think we have to continue to look forward and evaluate as we do that.
So when you took over the Fargo Police Department, when you came from Wisconsin and said, "You bet, I'll take that job," as with any police chief, there are things that you're going to look at and say, "Look, I want this kind of done. I'm the chief of police now, and I've found that this works." Have there been a lot of changes in the Fargo Police Department?
Well, quite a few actually, yeah. And and there is that perspective, but I also have to make sure that I'm working through my personnel. There's a lot of people in our department that have great subject matter expertise. In some instances, they just weren't in a position to fully utilize their skills and knowledge, or they didn't have the authority. And so, part of the reorganization plan of the department, and we just got our new executive staff in place. We're working on the sergeant promotions now process, is to really vet those people in a different way, a more objective, transparent way, and get people that are in place that understand the philosophies of what we're trying to do. And some of that is identifying a small percentage of people who are responsible for a lot of crime in certain locations, and then from a data-driven, intelligence-led perspective, going after that kind of with a focus, and then working proactively with the community at the same time on their end, because some of the folks that live in these neighborhoods that are seeing some of this violence, they don't want it to occur either. But sometimes they either historically or for whatever reasons haven't had great relationships with the police, so they're not necessarily coming to us with the information that would help identify a perpetrator and prevent future victimization. And so we're trying to, on both sides of that coin, address this issue, kind of bring the community in more as a partner with us to get some of these folks out of neighborhoods that are causing these issues.
So what about, because this obviously got everyone's attention, even national attention, and it was happening in a lot of other cities, but downtown got tore into. During the whole George Floyd era of what was going on, a lot of businesses got broke into. There was a riot downtown. Grade it. I mean, how did we do? What did we do wrong? What did we do right? What do we do in the future?
Well, I think our department and its personnel did the best job possible with what they had to work with. And this was a situation that I don't think had ever occurred here in Fargo before, and probably in a lot of other cities. So there wasn't a repetition. I think it came about quickly, so they had to respond and put some command and control together, really not knowing exactly what was the resolution, where were we going to end up. And so I think from that perspective, they did the best they could. We've identified a number of issues that we want to improve upon. One is, our personnel didn't have enough equipment to protect themselves. And we've already addressed that, so that when we put line staff out in a situation like that, we're not putting them out unprotected. But the whole command and control structure of what the police do and how they do it is not only being evaluated here in Fargo, but nationally. The International Association of Chiefs of Police is putting together subcommittees looking at different tools and tactics to address these types of situations going forward, because they also recognize that things like this hadn't happened in a long time. So the approach law enforcement used, not just locally but nationally, they fell back to what they had used many decades ago, and it was a different environment. So I think there's still a lot to be learned from that, and we're at the tip of the spear in terms of knowing what those evaluations and new technologies and tools are, and we'll make those improvements.
So, excuse me, there's a lot of people, myself included, that, I do talk radio, I do talk TV, and we tried to impress upon people time and time again that what was happening during that era of, very visible era of what was happening with law enforcement across the country, that 99 point whatever % of law enforcement was doing their job, doing it right. And basically out there with the training that they needed to deal with a lot of what was going on. How hard is it for you as a professional that has been hired into a community like this, and understanding law enforcement from, quite frankly, around all of the U.S., certainly the upper Midwest? How hard is it for you to see some people's perception and know it's not right? Know that that's not exactly what law enforcement is, or the people that you manage?
Well, I think it's easy for me to see that, because I agree with you 100%. 99.9% of our cops are out there doing the best job possible in some very trying circumstances, less than ideal circumstances. But I also know that in order for us to fill that void, that we need to change the perception of some of those in our community. And so that's an important piece in terms of trying to address that. And that requires the ability to, to be outreach, to communicate, to build relationships, and to start to diminish some of the distrust, because that's going to make our team and the community team stronger. Our department has done a lot of work in that direction. We're going to continue to do more to do that as well. But I think that's a big piece, and I think that's a big piece of our community policing philosophy as well. Not only our vision, mission, and values are wrapped around those same beliefs, but the way that we utilize our resources, as we just discussed, not just going after folks who are violating the law, but working with the communities that are experiencing the violence to help proactively work with them to reduce victimization.
So when you look at, and here's something that comes at me all the time, it constantly comes at me that I'm not sticking up for law enforcement enough, when I think I've got a really good track record of that. And then people that are adversary to me, on the political spectrum, stick up for me at times and say, look, this is what you actually said. Mm-hmm. But yet it isn't any of our job to not recognize some of what has been going on. Mm-hmm. Is that good for law enforcement? Is it good for law enforcement to have people challenge and question certain things?
Absolutely. I think that for growth of anyone, you really have to sometimes challenge your beliefs. Sometimes people do things long enough that they believe this is what works, so it's going to continue to work. Well, we're in a very dynamic profession. The world's a very dynamic place, and so for us to be really forward-thinking in what we do, we have to be willing to adapt, improvise, to grow, to learn, to do things differently. And I think our department is doing great work in that direction, and they have in the past, and we're enhancing that. But certainly we have to be able to accept challenge and have discussion. So there's nothing wrong with discussion and debate as long as it's respectful, and people learn things from that, and that's part of the whole growing those relationships piece. That's very important.
Chief, stick around. A couple more questions, okay? Sure. Chief Zibolski is somebody who, quite frankly, inherited a lot of things here in a metro area that many of us aren't used to in the upper Midwest. We'll visit some more with him right after this.
Howdy, folks. It's the County Cafe. I reckon it's time you're due for a hearty meal. So saddle up for the day with one of our hay-busting breakfast homemade soups. Fill your grill at a salad bar. Sink your teeth into our famous County Line burger and barbecue ribs. Top it off with spur-rattling pie with a calm roll that's sure to put a smile on even the toughest outlaws. Shake the dirt off the boots each night and warm up with the game. Tell them about it, Stacy.
I can't wait to see you at the County Line.
August 7th helped to set the world record for number of paddle craft on the Cheyenne River. Launch from Valley City or Fort Ransom State Park at 10 a.m. Central Time. See all the details and register at hellovalley.com.
Hi, Hunter Ellis here for Night Hero Binoculars by Atomic Beam. These binoculars let you see anything, even in pitch black darkness. Gotcha.
The secrets are powerful wide-angle atomic beam laser that reveals objects up to 150 yards away, hidden by darkness. During the day, Night Hero gives you 10 times magnification. And when the sun goes down, press the Night Bright button to see clearly in the dark. Light up garbage-eating critters or spot thieves before they even get close.
Call or click now and get Night Hero Binoculars for just $39.99. Order right now and you can double it.
Plus, get our best-selling atomic beam flashlight, just pay a separate fee.
We'll even ship them to you free.
This TV special offer is not available on Amazon. You can get it all, but you have to order now.
Call 1-800-619-1091. That's 1-800-619-1091. Or visit bynighthero.com. That's bynighthero.com. Order now.
Attention, have you or a loved one suffered from maculopathy, a serious retinal injury, after taking the prescription drug Elmiron for interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome? In 2018, a researcher at the Emory School of Medicine linked Elmiron, a prescription drug that treats interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome, to maculopathy, which is sight-threatening and can cause an abrupt change of vision. Call Elmiron Justice for a free legal consultation.
Please call 800-395-5680. Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by Nightline Legal. Cases assigned on a random basis to participating law firms. This drug remains approved by the FDA. If you or a loved one regularly took Zantac and were later diagnosed with cancer, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Potential cancers include bladder cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting with your doctor. Discontinuing a prescribed medication without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Call 1-800-230-9210.
Welcome back to Down the Road. Chief David Zibolski is still with us. He was nice enough to give us some more time, and we've been talking to him about, what's happening. Is Fargo a big crime area? Are people using guns more? Where do we go from here? And Chief, this is a high, you knew that when you moved here, that this is a high rate of gun ownership. There's a lot of people in this area that, hunting, for whatever reason, we own guns. For whatever reason, my wife shakes her head at me. I collect some here and there, but I got 23 guns and a couple of gun safes, which I don't know why I have that many, but I do. Is that different around here than what you see in other communities?
Not really necessarily. The issue with firearms, as long as people that lawfully own them keep them secured, is more about the individuals that are prohibited, that shouldn't have firearms, that get a hold of them and use them in crimes. And it's generally not the lawful owner that has anything to do with that, unless you leave your guns out unsecured, something of that nature, which we obviously encourage people not to do. Wisconsin went through this transition in 2012 when they went to a concealed carry licensure program, and at that time we were one of just a handful of states that didn't allow concealed carry. So it was a big transition for law enforcement in Wisconsin, and I got to kind of experience that and help train and work law enforcement through, because it was a big change. So out here in North Dakota, not that much different. You've got maybe, in terms of your constitutional carry law, some easier ways in which folks can carry guns that may require a little more work on law enforcement side to make sure that they aren't illegally carrying a gun. But I don't think that is fueling crime in general.
Okay, so because guns are around, we all recognize that, and you just said that it's not necessarily just here, but let's say that you are robbed and you do possess a gun, handgun in that area. What are your rights after the individual leaves? Because this happened in Fargo. A gentleman got robbed, he goes out, gets in his car, tries to get away, and then the store owner, comes outside and uses his weapon after that individual.
Sure.
What are the rights? What are the laws? How does that sit?
Yeah, actually, great question. So, you have absolutely the right to protect yourself and your home from yourself from death or great bodily harm, as well as your home. So, someone entering your home or attacking you with a weapon, that's an opportunity for you to use force, deadly force, if it's necessary to protect your life or someone else's. But when the person turns and now leaves, that situation has abated. And so for someone to fire at someone who is fleeing is not necessarily the same analysis. Now, this would be something that a state's attorneys would look at in a situation like that. I know you referenced that we had a case here in Fargo, and that's under review by the state's attorney's office. But from a Century Code law perspective, unless you're a law enforcement officer chasing a fleeing felon, because we have special exceptions to take that person into custody, the normal citizen should not fire at someone who is running away.
I can't imagine, a scenario where that individual, and maybe it's just the attitude, and probably the attitude nationwide, would really, the community would really want him held to a tough standard when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, that's a state attorney decision, but I think from a community perspective, it should be addressed in some fashion, just so that that person understands what they did wasn't lawful and understanding the circumstances. But we don't want to see other people proliferate that same conduct. Then we will start to see more issues in terms of firearms that are inappropriately put into place by people who would otherwise be lawful owners. And we certainly don't want to see people put in that position. Certainly if you need to defend yourself or your property, then do what you need to do that. But once, especially when police are responding, you have to keep in mind as our officers are coming to a scene, and if someone's out there shooting at the person running away, how do we know that you shooting the gun are not the perpetrator and one of our officers could mistakenly shoot you? And we don't want to see that happen. Very similar to when some of the issues that have happened in taverns where suddenly people are running around with guns. When there's an active shooting going on, law enforcement's going to respond, protect yourself, but I would not engage any further in that because you're putting yourself in jeopardy as well. Our cops can't discern in that 2-second encounter who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. We see someone with a gun who's shooting at somebody else, and we have to make a split-second decision. So there is that piece to consider.
I also have to ask you this. When you watch the video of what happened on January 6th, and you watched the job that the men and women did with the Capitol Police and with the DC Police, what are the emotions? What goes through your head when you see the dedication that they had?
Well, I think, not just there, but law enforcement across the country has dealt with this for the last year. I mean, Portland police had been under siege the whole time, the courthouse, and it's just it's very difficult to watch because we know that those officers are doing everything they can to safeguard a location, and they may or may not have all the equipment, leadership training that they necessarily need, and so I think that's just hard to watch. And as I said before, in part of our analysis and what would we do next time, the tactics need to change. We don't want to put inadvertently our officers in a position of danger if we don't need to. And so I think part of the exploring of how could we do this different includes that. Do we need a line of officers on a street for no reason other than to make sure a crowd doesn't go any farther who isn't causing any other damage? Now, I think if someone's harming someone or damaging property or looting property, that's something that we need to be able to address. But we don't necessarily have to put a line of cops in front of a group of people when the likely outcome is they're just going to have things thrown at them, and it's more of a enticement for the crowd than assuaging the concerns. And so I think that whole tactics piece is going to change. You'll see that nationally change going forward, especially as the IACP does its work in those areas.
So what's a bigger deterrent on traffic crime, on traffic violation? Crime's probably, I don't know, too strong a word, but is it better for law enforcement to be seen going up and down the road as a deterrent? Or at what point do you know that pulling them over, writing them a ticket, they've earned it, versus, hey, that light was yellow, you knew better, they see you, and you maybe scared the bejeepers out of them?
Well, the goal, especially with traffic enforcement, is to change the behavior. We want it to be safe for everyone on the roadways, including pedestrians and bicyclists. So it's really that, I think presence is always a piece of anything, even regular crime. But making traffic stops routinely like we do and addressing those issues, and our officers give out a vast array of warnings. Not every stop is a ticket. And that first contact with that driver a lot of times sets the tone for how is the contact. And so a lot of the training we've done with a couple of our community groups on traffic stops is focused on understanding we have the same fears at the beginning. The person driving the car might be afraid of getting a ticket, or they might be afraid that the cop is going to do something or hurt them in some fashion based on their experience. Well, the officer approaching the car doesn't know who's in the car either, and they don't know what you know or don't know about what they've done or not done. And so we have a same concern when we approach the car. In that initial conversation where our officer will introduce himself and say, hey, here's why I stopped you, and your response to that starts to set the stage for what do we need to do here in order to change the behavior. And then sometimes people commit traffic violations, but there's an understandable, valid reason. They understand what they did wrong, and the officer has the discretion in determining whether I need to issue a citation or not, or what's the severity of the violation. And so it's really based on our reasonable application of the law and, a respectful response from the person that we're stopping. And we treat everyone with dignity and respect. That's our expectation. We ask for that in exchange, even though I understand we don't always get that. But it can certainly set the tone for a different kind of a contact.
Okay, two more, I promise. You're a border city. There always was great partnership between Fargo and Moorhead, and then the Minnesota legislature steps up, maybe because of the George Floyd incident, whatever the motivation was, but they stopped you your force from having the ability to use deadly force when you were giving aid to Moorhead. Is there still an interaction between the two? Will you go over on a call?
Well, right now we won't go over on a call, but we've had a long history of a great relationship with our partners in Moorhead and Clay County, and we would greatly like that to continue. The Minnesota legislature earlier this year, March 1st, I believe, enacted a change to their deadly force laws, which put itself in complete opposition or adverse to the Supreme Court case law in Graham v. Connor, which regulates law enforcement across the United States in terms of deadly force and when it's reasonable to use deadly force. So they added some specific language provisions that if an officer doesn't follow, could open them up to criminal prosecution. So they stand essentially on an island in terms of how they view deadly force. And so for us to say to our officers, hey, you're trained based on this other national standard, Supreme Court case law standard as to how and when you should use deadly force and when its application is appropriate. And as soon as you cross the river and go into Moorhead in a split-second life or death situation, you're now supposed to apply a new standard which is more specific and in conflict with the case law. So you have the choice of either applying the new standard and potentially getting harmed yourself, or following the training that you will likely in a stressful situation fall back to, and potentially being charged with a crime if it's seen that way on the Minnesota side. So unfortunately, we aren't able to put our officers over there and I would not put them in that type of a dangerous position or a position in which they are in jeopardy in another way. So we're working with our partners across the river, and we hope that at some point there's some amendment to that legislation that would fix that issue and allow us again to continue that partnership.
Well, I will tell you this, as a former legislator, it was a foolish move. I won't put you in the middle of that by the Minnesota legislature and Minnesota law. Last one, I promise. Viking Packer. What's the record by the end of the year? You're from Wisconsin. Now, be nice. By the end of the year, what's the Packers' record versus the Vikings?
Well, I'll predict the Packers take the division again. And what will their record be? Now there's 2 more games, right?
It's 17 now.
What, 17 games?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll go 13-4. There's no analysis to that.
We were one of the teams that beat you last year going in. Of course, it didn't matter much. You made it to the NFC Championship. But by the way, you shouldn't have kicked the field goal. Can I just say that?
I would concur with that.
Were you screaming at your TV?
Yeah, that needs to be fixed. That would have ended differently, I think.
Chief, thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Dr. Denise Jonas joins us after this. We're going to talk about education and what we're doing when it comes to career and tech right here as we go down the road.
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Billings, your host of The Right Side with Doug Billings on Beck News. We bring you high-profile guests, ladies and gentlemen, exclusive guests. Now, you're not going to see these guests in most of the mainstream media outlets. Another thing that I do here is give guests a platform to speak freely. You're not going to see me censor anybody. Please join us, won't you? Weeknights right here on Beck TV and online at beck.news. Cheers.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream sheets. When you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Introducing the Cool Turtle, the ultra-comfortable mask enhancer that creates a protective, cool, and breathable space between your mask and your face. Simply slide under any mask or gaiter and immediately feel the refreshing pocket of air surrounding your face. Cool Turtle's ergonomically designed, soft, comfortable shell immediately reduces mask friction, allowing you to breathe and talk in a comfortable environment.
I can actually breathe. With the Cool Turtle, no more sweating.
It's like I don't even
even have a mask on.
Call now and get not one, not two, but 3 cool turtles for just $10. Order now and we'll send you 2 more cool turtles free. No fees, absolutely free. Plus, you can get a 10-pack of 4-ply face masks. Just pay a separate fee. This offer is not available on Amazon. Get the real cool turtle now.
Call 1-800-270-1219. That's 1-800-270-1219. Or visit getcoolturtle.com. Order now.
Seniors, are you aware that you could pay less for your car insurance?
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
You might save a little, you might save a lot.
Maybe hundreds of dollars a year.
You might save 5% a year, maybe 10%, 15%, or even more.
That's a lot of money.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
1-800-699-0761. 1-800-699-0761.
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after-hours oasis of sanity. Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Could you do us a favor? Beck TV is a finalist for Best Local TV Station in the Bismarck Tribune's Best of the Best. Vote now through August 9th by text or online. Vote for your leader in local, Beck TV.
Well, thanks for staying in the rig. We've got a little more to go down the road. And many of you have let me know that one of the questions you have is, why can't you get that plumber? Why can't you get that electrician? Why are we struggling to get that diesel mech? Whether you're watching here on Beck News or whether you're listening to the radio, the one thing that you consistently hear is advertisement for employees. People aren't able to find the employees that they need or that they want. Now, that could be multiple things, but the one thing worth, probably getting ourselves educated about is what we're doing at the K-12 level and how that's tying into the higher education level. Well, Dr. Denise Jonas is she's one of those individuals that I've counted on, and many others have, for information. She's a career and technical education director with the Fargo Public Schools, and she joins us now. Dr. Jonas, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel, for having me back in. We had a little opportunity to visit on the air a couple weeks ago, and I said we have stories to tell, so thanks for letting me come back to share a few more.
Well, let's do that. Let's talk about that. The relationship that the public has when it comes to the workers they need and the perception of how we're doing at the education level. Are we failing, or are we doing as good a job as we possibly can towards creating that next generation of workers?
Well, I think that we can always do better. And I think that's with anything in all of our schools. I work for Fargo Public Schools, West Fargo, Northern Cass, and Central Cass. And together, our conversation is always about continuous improvement. And so one of the things in the area that I work with, specifically career and technical education, we're always reaching out to the employers to say, what do you need and what are you looking for? So that's one of the advantages I feel like we have with our advisory committees, is trying to get a pulse of what is happening in their world. But one of the areas that I think that we're challenged with is the image of some of our industries, and sometimes it's an image because of the past and people thinking that the only way to be successful is a 4-year degree. And we know that the trades industries definitely are an area of need and can come through the apprenticeship process, certifications, some of the scholarships from employers, and post-secondary 2-year programs. So I think we need to do a better job in K-12 with our adults and our parents, and then just showing the partnerships that we can have for kids at the high school in some of these, what I would call areas that are less desirable or perceived to be less desirable. So.
Okay, so how big of a problem then? Because we know the dropout rate at UND and NDSU, and we know that it's higher than what we want it to be. How big of a problem is UND hockey and NDSU football? And I say this not to be glib, but I know a lot of young men that went to NDSU because they loved the football team. They didn't take a look at what the best career path was. And that's a ridiculous question about just the sports. But, okay, better way to ask this question. I have a nephew that this is his first summer without being in summer school. you know, he's not going to be a doctor. He's not going to probably get that 4-year degree from NDSU. But his parents have really stuck to the plan of, hey, you love to hunt, you love to fish. You can achieve all those goals by going to North Dakota State College of Science, getting that plumbing certificate, getting that electrical. You know, how well are we doing when it comes to that?
You know, one of the questions I would wonder is what pressure a student feels, not about hockey or football, but the family history of attending an institution. So sometimes it's not necessarily related to those sports, which we love, but it is related to the history of the family and the expectations. So was there pressure from that student to go to UND because that's been a historical pattern in a family, just like families will be hockey families or wrestling families or football families, and so it sometimes tracks that way when it comes to institutions as well. What we are trying to do is help students explore what they like at an earlier age. And our counselors are doing that, but I think we talked in the last show is that, you know, when you have a ratio of 1 to 300 for a counselor to talk to students and talk about what do you really like, what are you good at. Some of our students aren't aware of what they're good at, they're exploring, and then again that time to really have those good conversations with students beyond the family in school is something that we struggle a little bit with just because of counselor time. That's why one of the things we really want to push is career everywhere, so that our academic teachers understand more of the jobs that are available, so that they can also be an advocate to students. Hey, I see that you are good at math, maybe that's something that would push you into an engineering and a technical degree, not just to be an engineer, but all of the programming jobs that are related to the engineer to help with the software side of it. And so I think teachers knowing what careers are available is another area that we're really trying to ramp up in our school, so the counselor can share that guidance plan and work with specific discussions, but then our career tech teachers are providing skills training and exploration, and then our academic teachers can understand what jobs are even there. And so those are things that we're working on, but it's an ongoing conversation.
Last week at the state fair, I had an opportunity to visit with Gooseneck Implement, and they have a program out there because they're constantly in need of trained employees. They have a program out there where they're trying to get into the high school classrooms and be able to talk to the individuals about the program that they have available. You know, I asked him on the radio, I said, well, are you getting access? You know, one of the times that you were on media with me before, we talked about that, how much access you can give, specific or industry as a whole. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with me knocking on your door saying, I want to talk to these kids?
One of the things is getting right. They can knock on my door and I can connect them to the teacher, but at the time the teacher has a curriculum. And so finding it purposeful to bring that person in is one conversation that we work through. And then another conversation might be, it's odd in our school. I might be a teacher that has a section of Diesel 1, and I might have it 4 periods throughout the day, and that might be at, you know, 9:30, 11 o'clock, 1:30, and, you know, 2:30. And so sometimes it can be a little tricky too for the employer to give up a whole day to come in and visit. One of the things we've been trying to do is capitalize on having them face-to-face and then record it so that we can reproduce it so that person is in our school. But one of the things that we have been challenged with a little bit is just the time. So if we had 10 diesel employers that want to come into our classroom, which we try to stagger in, it ends up being that maybe you aren't in the shop as much because you're listening to a guest speaker. So we're trying to be more systemic about how we have some real experiences, and it might not be every employer. It might be we have some employers come in and we rotate how often they come in. So those are some things with time that we have to be sensitive to. So.
Dr. Jonas, your school district, probably one of the biggest school districts in the state that has to address the issue of First Americans. How do you make sure they have the opportunity for a career path? You know, students that are new to this region, new to this area, and new to this country. I mean, how do you make sure that there's an understanding there of what opportunity they have?
Boy, that is a great question, because that is one of our areas that I feel like we definitely need to work on. The technical areas have a lot of vocabulary just to begin with. When you walk into any one of our, whether it's health sciences or you walk into a technology and engineering classroom, they have their own vocabulary. So now you take a first English language learner who's learning English, and now we're teaching them another technical language. It can be pretty complicated, but yet they are the student that we want to be able to explore more so that they have an opportunity. And I think that's an equity and access conversation. So we recognize that we need to do more work, whether that's front loading of like technical vocabulary with students while they're doing some of their English at the same time. Again, that can be challenging for the student, and you can only learn so much at a time, you know, a pace that you can learn at. But we're trying to work with those English language departments to say, how do we have a student enter the classroom with more support so that they can be in there and experience the labs, but also then have support to learn the vocabulary and the language that they need to be successful.
That's got to be hard. I mean, it's just got to be really hard to connect, you know, and to be able to get that family support when you don't know them and you don't maybe know the culture as well as what maybe some other areas. You already talked about how there's a lot of interaction that's needed between parents and yourself. And, you know, I know a number of students in some of the rural areas that come from, I don't know, one parent homes where that parent might be holding down two jobs just to get ahead.
Right.
I mean, how do you deal with that issue? Because to interact with the parent or to know that child's going home and getting the help that they need, it doesn't mean they're a bad parent. It just means time's got to be an issue.
They're busy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with our middle level groups. You know, we want more parent engagement, but their parents are very engaged in just providing for their families, which we recognize. I am very excited about the Director of Equity and Inclusion that we have for Fargo Public Schools with Dr. Usselman and Casey Collins in West Fargo. And they really have a pulse on how do we go back and look what are our practices for equity, and are we actually being fair in how we have our students engage in some of these conversations. We are trying to create some programming that maybe would bring a student in and give them some prep work on some of the conversation around a technical program. Let's say CNA, for example. And so if we do a pre-CNA, would that help them then go into the classroom and complete the CNA and be successful on the exam? So those are services that are happening with the school, but parent engagement is always a conversation. It's been a conversation for, 50 years, I'm sure, but the conversation on how do we have parents be more involved in their students' education is always a given.
Last one in the little bit of time we have left. There's a lot of school administrators, teachers, parents that are listening to you right now in rural areas. What would your advice be to them to do what Fargo can do because of the size of the school district?
Well, I really commend the rural schools because they push the envelope on innovation and creativity when it comes to sharing services, and they've really tried to use interactive video conferencing equipment since the 70s. And so I do think that they've been ahead on some of those technologies and embracing them. But again, going to that online piece is going to be the conversation. One thing that does hinder us is the Carnegie unit of seat time. And so how can we be more creative with the seat time that we were required to use now that we have some policy changes at the state level, and look at how do we use our time and how are students learning. And we have some model school districts that are, I call Class B students in our area when it comes down to the Wahpeton area, Northern Cass and Central Cass, Kindred. They're looking at online learning. How can they travel into the center and take some career experience classes and prioritize busing so that students can actually get to the center. So those are some things that I think that we can continue to work on in our area.
Dr. Jonas, you're good at what you do. Don't quit. Don't get wore out. Don't quit.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it. All right, when we come back, the number 99 is going to be brought up. 99%. What do you think that's about? Stick with us. We'll tell you right after this.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors. Use your promo code, and for a limited time, when you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by Nightline Legal. Cases assigned on a random basis to participating law firms. This drug remains approved by the FDA. If you or a loved one regularly took Zantac and were later diagnosed with cancer, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Potential cancers include bladder cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting with your doctor. Discontinuing a prescribed medication without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Call 1-800-230-9210.
Seniors, are you aware that you could pay less for your car insurance?
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
You might save a little, you might save a lot.
Maybe hundreds of dollars a year.
You might save 5% a year, maybe 10%, 15%, or even more.
That's a lot of money.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
1-800-699-0761. 1-800-699-0761.
Hi, it's me, Anthony Sullivan. And yes, you've actually caught me at home relaxing, because life's been pretty worry-free since I got coverage with American Residential Warranty. You won't believe what ARW covers. Heating and air conditioning, washers and dryers, kitchen appliances, plumbing, water heaters, electrical systems, flat screens and laptops, even pools and spas, and so much more. Call American Residential Warranty. They'll get you covered.
1-800-219-1467.
Go for Launch 2018 series winner. Without further ado, it is my honors. Reginae. The winning team is the Flumin River Excellent.
Oh my God!
They won!
So 99%, I told you we're going to talk about this. What does the 99% mean? Well, 99% of those individuals in the hospital in Florida and Louisiana, 99% of those individuals in the hospital have not had the vaccine. Period. Plain and simple. Is that number big enough for you to understand where the problem lies? We know now that individuals who have had the vaccine can carry COVID. We also know, and this is the important part, that individuals that have had the vaccine aren't getting sick. They're nowhere near being on a respirator. They're nowhere near dying. Now, you're going to have a case here and there that you can use as an example to fit the narrative that you want. You can sit there and say, well, the Food and Drug Administration has just given an emergency clearance. They haven't approved these COVID drugs yet. So then if you say that, I'm going to ask you this. Once it is approved, will you take the vaccine? Many of you won't. Whether or not you're using the Food and Drug Administration, whether or not you're using the example of the one individual that you know or that national media has told you about that got sick, are you getting your information from Facebook or Newsmax or Fox News? Are you getting your information from those? Because if you are getting your information from those, then you shouldn't feel safe. If you're basing your decision off of that, again, I go back to 99%. I mean, 99% for you individuals that have refused to get the vaccination, for you individuals that have done that, I've got a suggestion for the nation in regards to that. make people have a vaccination card. No different than you had when you went into school. You had to prove, or at least I did, prove that I had smallpox vaccination, prove that I had polio vaccination, prove that I had measles vaccination. Why is that wrong? And I will tell you this, private industry is going to get there because we're close again to this country having to do things none of us want to do. Those of us that have been vaccinated, we don't want to put masks back on. And you who refuse to get vaccinated, you're not going to put them on anyway because you don't believe in COVID. There's 6 people out there in my life, just my life, that I knew personally that were good friends that aren't here anymore because of COVID. Because of COVID. Now, I don't want to hear about one of those friends being 89 years old and the other being 86 and them being a couple and how they were going to die anyway. That's not your right. You don't get to determine, well, they were going to die anyway. I don't want to hear about how 2 of them were overweight and diabetic. They would be here if it wasn't for COVID. I don't want to hear about how the other one really was in a position where he could have taken better of himself. I don't want to hear that. Because here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen, all of them would have been here if it wasn't for COVID. Period. The Delta variant is much more aggressive. It's infected. You can get infected from it much easier and much faster. Why aren't you getting vaccinated? I don't want to see the government give you $100 to get vaccinated. I want to see the government give me $100 for being vaccinated. I want them to use me for stimulus money to get the economy going. And if they don't want to give it to me, I'm okay with that. Give it to my kids. Give it to individuals who maybe need it a little more than me. But give it to the people that were good enough to be vaccinated. And stop the individuals who won't get vaccinated from getting on that flight, from getting into that football game. You know what? We talked about Bison football earlier. Here's a thought. Don't let people go into that stadium unless they've been vaccinated. You'll find more people get vaccinated because of that. We'll be back with some closing comments right here as we continue down the road.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? After all, a visit to the dentist can easily cost $2,000 or more. Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call now and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. Activate your card and you can start using it immediately. From exams and cleanings to more expensive procedures like crowns, dentures, even braces, they're all included with the Carefree Dental Card. Say you go to the dentist today without any card and your bill is, well, ouch. Wait a minute, let's try that again. You go to the dentist today and show your Carefree Dental Card, you save $525. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month, so call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 1-800-416-5739 to receive your Carefree Dental Card information kit. 1-800-416-5739. Call now.
I can't say enough good things about these nano hearing aids.
Real people talking about nano hearing aids.
The hearing quality is great.
Until now, hearing aids used to be too expensive for the average person. Until nano. Call now and you'll get your nano hearing aids for only $297. You'll save $100. When you buy one hearing aid, Nano will give you a second hearing aid free. Call right now.
1-800-213-3815.
Spas, etc.
You've come to know and trust us for over 18 years with the largest selection and showroom in Western North Dakota for our beautiful Sundance spas. Plus, you can pick out your next home experience with our selection of pool tables, shuffleboards, and fun accessories.
Spas, etc. Your relaxation destination on Main and Bismarck.
Calling all first responders. Join us Saturday, July 31st for First Responders Night at the Bismarck Event Center. The Bucks take on the Green Bay Blizzard with a 7:10 p.m. Central Time kickoff, and will highlight those who serve and protect our communities. For more information on tickets, visit bismarckbucks.com and download your free general admission ticket today. Saturday, July 31st, it's the Blizzard versus your Bismarck Bucks. See you on the 31st. Go Bucks!
Attention! Have you or a loved one suffered from maculopathy, a serious retinal injury, after taking the prescription drug Almiron for interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome? In 2018, a researcher at the Emory School of Medicine linked Almiron, a prescription drug that treats interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome, to maculopathy, which is sight-threatening and can cause an abrupt change of vision. Call Almiron Justice for a free legal consultation.
Please call 800-395-5680.
I would ask you how you like the smoke in the air, but that'd be a foolish question, wouldn't it? I would ask you whether or not it's affected your life. That wouldn't be such a foolish question. I know individuals that because of the smoke in the air and because of what it's doing to them, they're not going outside. They're not going outside at all. It hasn't stopped me from doing what I do. I still golf, and I still, I went on a Rager run this weekend with a bunch of others. I mean, I'm still doing things to have fun. I get that on my weekends and my nights, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's not going to go away. Tom Szymanski from my weather team said, you know what? It might be here until the snow flies. That's pretty scary. Want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that these young men, or young girls too, they're heading back into practice. I mean, think about that. If you're in high school, you're within the next couple days going to be starting football practice. I'm going to sound like the old man here, but that never would have happened in my day. That never would have happened in my day. We wouldn't be starting school in the middle of August. In Minnesota, the law is you can't start until after Labor Day. And one of the reasons that we wouldn't have started, we would not have been allowed to start school that early, is because we needed young boys and girls for work. That's right. They had part-time jobs, or they had jobs on the farm, or jobs on the ranch. What I found interesting was, and this is some years back, that if you take a look at Napoleon, it was the first school to come back in. Napoleon. Now, when you think of Napoleon, what do you think about? You think about agriculture. You think about production agriculture. And you think about ranching, right? You think about an area where there's a lot of need. When it comes to baling, there's a lot of need. When it comes to combining, there's just a lot of need. And yet these young men, for example, were heading back into high school, and they were doing it early. Maybe they're not needed. Maybe automation is coming that far, but I do know this. It's getting earlier and earlier and earlier, and I don't think it's a good thing. Good riding with you, folks.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow, and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors. Use your promo code, and for a limited time, when you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit my